Tatsu is a lonely, ratchety, short-stack high schooler with a pet shape-shifting monster named Senko. One day a girl is walking by when she notices a random bike move on its own, so she goes in for a closer look. But just then the owner Tatsu shows up, and from his perspective, it absolutely looks like Yuki was trying to steal his bike. So he tells her to get her grubby mitts off it before he calls the cops. Yuki apologizes, but she assures him she wasn't trying to steal his bike. She just happened to see it move on its own and she thought it was weird, so she wanted to take a closer look. As a matter of fact, she could see an eye popping out of the seat right now, so she pokes it, and all of a sudden, the bike turns into a large monster. Understandably, she has a lot of questions, but first, Tatsu needs to make sure no one else sees Senko, so he orders Senko to turn into a panda toy to avoid suspicion. He explains the situation to her and makes a promise not to tell anyone else about his shape-shifting monster pet. All of a sudden, a random dude shows up out of nowhere, and he's got a monster as well. Shu says he wants Tatsu to hand Senko over, but Tatsu has no intention of doing that, so he turns Senko into a pair of scissors and cuts off one of the tentacles on Shu's monster. Senko ends up getting swatted away, but the damage dealt was enough to limit Shu's monster's mobility, so Tatsu turns Senko into a car and drives away. Later that day, Shu corners Yuki on her way home and demands that she tell him where Tatsu and Senko went because he wants that shape-shifting ability. She says she has no idea where he is because she literally just met him today, and you'd think Shu would be chill about it since this girl obviously has nothing to do with this whole mess. But nope, he kidnaps her and drops her on the ledge of a random building because he figures Tatsu would have to come save her eventually. Meanwhile, on a different rooftop, Tatsu is sitting with Senko, just minding his own business, but all of a sudden Senko somehow notices Yuki in trouble, so he immediately swallows Tatsu and turns into a plane so he can fly over and help. Once they eventually arrive, Tatsu asks Yuki what she's doing up here since it's really dangerous, but it's not like she had much of a choice in the first place. She asked him to just get her down already, but just then, a kilometer away, Shu and his monster grab a tower antenna and launch that thing at supersonic speed, right on top of Tatsu and Senko. Thankfully, the damage wasn't too severe, but Senko's arm was ripped off in the process, leaving him weakened, but a moment later he regenerates it somehow. Shu then teleports next to Senko with his giant monster, and Yuki doesn't want to let him hurt Senko, but there's not much she can do, so Tatsu opens up a door and pulls her into Senko for safety. Inside, she finds Tatsu writhing in pain because in order to heal his dismembered arm, Senko apparently ate Tatsu's arm entirely, and that shit hurt like hell, so he's not gonna be able to think straight, much less fight for the next few minutes. However, if they don't do something quickly, then Shu's going to devour Senko. So Yuki comes up with an idea and asks Senko to switch control from Tatsu to her. Brave choice considering the fact that she just saw Senko eat his owner's arm to heal, and while Tatsu firmly objects, despite this, control over Senko is still somehow transferred to Yuki against his will. A second later, Shu's monster grabs Tatsu and yanks him out of Senko so he can assimilate him. But he didn't realize that Yuki was still in there as well, so he swallows Senko in her whole. However, just when he thought he had finally obtained the shape-shifting ability, Yuki somehow manages to override his control from the inside, turning the monster into a giant pudding cup. She grabs Tatsu and starts waddling away in the pudding cup, but by now the military has become aware of the situation, and they are currently unloading their artillery into said pudding cup. To protect herself, Yuki ends up turning it into a walnut with a hard shell, and in the meantime, Tatsu finds and manages to detach Senko from the giant monster, but he's seen a lot smaller now, and once he is officially separated, Yuki's control shifts from the giant monster back to Senko. As a result, Shu regains control over the giant. He tries to get it to transform so they can escape, but since Senko is disconnected from it, it no longer has the shape-shifting ability to return to its original form, so now it's basically stuck as a walnut. Moments later, Yuki turns Senko into a baseball bat, and before Shu can react, she proceeds to crack him upside the head with it. Then while he is unconscious, she and Tatsu cut their way out of the monster's body just as the military launches a heavy artillery bombardment on the monster, blowing through its hard shell and killing it. Yuki and Tatsu were still in the blast radius, but luckily, Senko is able to shield them from the blast. However, Yuki is still the one with control over Senko, and Tatsu is still missing an arm, so she attaches Senko to Tatsu and turns him into a replacement arm. As for Shu, he somehow managed to survive the whole ordeal and orders his pet to get him out of here so he can recover. At the same time, elsewhere in the world, two monster control agents have just received a report on their new target. It's Shu, and they both recognize him as a former agent who went rogue and stole 2 drones before disappearing. Now it's their job to bring him back, but KbAni reads a little further into the report and finds out that Shu apparently lost one of his monsters during a fight against another monster user. The file identifies Tatsu as the monster user in question, and KbAni seems to be interested in him. Mostly because she thinks he is cute, but also because he could be a lead on finding Shu. After all, her satellite monsters can't locate someone with the ability to go invisible whenever he wants. Meanwhile, back at school, Tetsu is helping Yuki get a shovelcock out of a tree with Senko, but he really wishes she'd give him control over Senko again because he's getting sick of not being able to transform him without her. Yuki tells him she's not intentionally keeping Senko away from him, but she really doesn't know how to transfer back, so until she figures it out, they are stuck like this. Later that day, Tetsu is spending some alone time on the roof when all of a sudden KbAniE and her drone land next to him. She gets out its mouth and notices that Tetsu's arm has an eye on it, so she tries to grab his arm to get a closer look, but she ends up falling on top of him. And that's when Yuffie walks in. At first it looks like something inappropriate is going on, but she knows Tetsu is way too awkward to actually have a girlfriend, so she asks him what's going on. Just then Tsurumi peeks over the wall, and although KbAniE is technically just meant to be looking for Shu, she decides to capture Tetsu first because he's interesting. Tetsu realizes they are in danger, so he tells Yuki to turn Senko into something he can fight with, but unfortunately, a blade isn't very effective against Tsurumi, so Tetsu gets slammed to the floor. KbAniE demands that Tetsu tell her where Shu is, but neither he nor Yuki has any idea where Shu went, so they got nothing to tell her. Just then, KbAniE feels something tugging her head, and she realizes it must be Shu, so she orders Tsurumi to fire a laser to stop him. The laser cuts the tentacle off and Shu reveals himself, but just when KbAniE thinks he's about to fight her, he reveals that she isn't actually his target today, and by the time she realizes that, he has already grabbed Tetsu and Yuki and disappeared. He takes them to a local shop, and long story short, he wants to propose a truce with them as long as they help him take down KbAniE. Yuki immediately nooks out of there because she doesn't trust Shu at all, and Tetsu doesn't trust him either, but Shu convinces Tetsu to hear him out by promising to help him regain his link to Senko. Meanwhile, Yuki has just been dragged into a car by KbAniE and Gotoda, but he's starting to feel a little uncomfortable about this because with Yuki struggling so much, it makes him feel like a kidnapping accomplice. KbAniE reminds him that they really are kidnapping her, so he should just hurry up and drive away before someone spots them. They later take her to a park and inform Yuki that they are special agents in charge of taking care of dangerous monsters called drones all across the world. Shu is one of their rogue members, so they need to capture him before he does any real damage, and they need Yuki's help to do it. They ask her to lure the others out so they can confront them for the greater good. Yuki is having second thoughts about trusting the person who kidnapped her off the street earlier, but she's got no loyalty to Shu, so she doesn't mind helping them catch him. But as for Tetsu, Yuki is no backstabber, so she later tells him straight up that KbAniE and Gotoda asked her to bring him to them. He agrees to the meeting, but only under the condition that they meet in an isolated area of the city, and that they do it at night because he doesn't want KbAniE's satellite drone spotting them. Yuki thinks it's a little too risky to go at night since he might get into trouble, but he says if she's so worried about him, then she can come help him if she wants. Yuki ends up doing just that, so later that night, she and Tetsu make their way into the abandoned section of the city, and there, they are confronted by Gotoda and KbAniE. KbAniE says she's glad Tetsu actually decided to show up, but Tetsu already has a good idea about why she wanted to see him, so he says there's no way he's going to work with her. Isn't always KbAniE, so she says that if he's going to be uncooperative, then she's just going to force him to comply. Tetsu asks Yuki to transform Senko when he gives the signal, and she's really confused by his request, but he promises to explain everything once they are done here, so she goes along with it for now. As KbAniE orders Tsurumi to attack, Tetsu yells for Yuki to give him a weapon, so she turns Senko into a gun, but regular bullets don't seem to be effective against this thing, and Tetsu ends up getting grabbed. KbAniE looks really smug because she thinks she has won, and she asks Tetsu if he is finally ready to do as he is told, but he's still got one trick up his sleeve. He tells Yuki to transform Senko now, so she does as he says and turns Senko into a large sheet, completely blocking Tsurumi's view. Just then, Shu's drone appears right next to KbAniE, and since Tsurumi's vision is obstructed, it can't protect her right now, so Shu is able to sever KbAniE's link to Tsurumi before taking control of it himself and restraining her. This has worked out perfectly for Shu, but he still needs to fulfill his end of the deal with Tetsu, so he grabs Yuki and removes her link to Senko as well. However, as soon as Yuki's link is removed, Shu feels a strange force tugging at his link with Tsurumi, and before he knows it, it has somehow been transferred to Yuki, just like what happened to Tetsu. Now that Tsurumi is under her control, Yuki proceeds to piece up Shu, forcing him to retreat, and now that he has lost Tsurumi, he needs to get another drone. He finds Tetsu walking with Senko and immediately knocks him to the ground. Tetsu asks what his problem is, and Shu plainly tells him that he's going back on the deal they had, so he wants Tetsu to hand Senko over. Tetsu obviously refuses, and no matter how much Shu beats him up, he won't let go of Senko even if it kills him. The struggle continues until Yuki is no longer linked to Senko. Tetsu is able to re-establish his link, and from there he is locked in. Shu tries hitting him with a tentacle strike, but he slices it off by turning Senko into a blade, and after that he proceeds to staple Shu's drone to the ground before turning Senko into a cannon and blasting a hole straight through it, leaving Shu defenseless. And to finish things off, he turns Senko into a bat and he knocks the crap out of Shu's head. Tetsu then drags him back over to the others and tells them they can have Shu as long as they leave him alone, and considering the fact that their mission has been a total failure until now, they take him up on the offer. Tetsu then walks over to Yuki and asks why she had to go and take over Surimi because it's way too big to hide at school. They then take off, and Kaname is a little pissed that Yuki stole Surimi from her, but she could always ask her grandpa to get her a new one, so it doesn't bother her too much.